welcome to Help to Adjust. If testimony was a person, today we have a consummate professional, a businessman, someone who has done a lot in the medical industry, the medical billing industry, practice management, etc. Mr. Bert Lurch. How you doing, sir?
Thank you. Good, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. So it's good to be talking to you today. And, I really want to know, how you came about this field that is not a common field for us to be in. But first, where were you raised?
So I was raised in Lawton/Springfield Gardens, Queens. So right down the road from here. My parents were from Jamaica, the West Indies. So I grew up with that Jamaican culture, the Jamaican household, But Lawton, I'm a Queens guy. Queens raised me. Queens raised me.
Yeah. So you were born in Queens?
Yes, born in Queens. My parents, again, from Jamaica. But, I still have that culture, that Jamaican work ethic. That's a big part of who I am. So, my parents, the biggest thing for them was to come from the islands and work to get a house. They did it. That was it. Like, they did it. And make sure their kids, worked and went to school. So for them to fulfill their dream, and then for me to come up as a child, and a lot of Caribbean parents, are very tough on their kids because they know that they want them to do well here in America. School was very important. So, I was able to finish out high school, and then I went to college, et cetera. And then I started working in the hospital system. And that's kind of how my career started. But, the Caribbean background that I have is a big piece of my work ethic. And sometimes, I try to learn how to not work. You got to work smarter versus harder.
Yeah.
And, I've seen my parents, literally, their hands, my dad used to tell me, I don't want you to use your hands like I use my hands to work, use your brain. So he even knew that, but he just wanted to make sure that I had an education. So that was always something, both my sisters are in healthcare. One's a nurse. The other one is a nutritionist. My mother worked in the healthcare system. She was a nurse attendant, and my father was a head cook in Northwell. Well, it wasn't Northwell then, but Long Island Jewish Hospital.
Yeah.
So I was kind of born into this. I had to get into healthcare. So that's kind of how my story started off.
Man, let me tell you, it's very interesting. First of all, I have counseled loads of Caribbean clients who basically told me exactly that story, that, they were told if you can get $10,000 together, you can get a house, work night and day if you have to do what you have to do to achieve that. And, sometimes, honestly, the people who are in therapy partially are there because although they never had a doubt that their parents loved them and wanted the best for them, that tenderness wasn't always there.
Oh, yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and we talk about the love and affection in certain households. And, seeing, I may have seen my parents kiss one time, one New Year's. I probably almost fainted because that was the only time I ever seen that. So, our childhood and what we saw, it definitely affects who we are now. Yeah. But it's not easier. I want to say that you can reflect on that better as you get older and you start to try to evaluate why you are who you are. But when you're in your 20s and 30s, you're just doing, and you don't realize that your childhood probably affected you. So I get where you're coming from with that. And I definitely saw that in my household. There was love, but how it was shown was...
Right. Because there's
that
the
was
5
different.
love languages and, quality of time, acts of service and, touch.
Gifts and a few of it. I forget the other one there.
Yeah, but acts of service is typically that in Caribbean households, like parents make sure that you have food, they make sure you have good, neat clothes to wear, and that you are all good. And so those acts of service are the way they show love, but maybe not so much the words of affirmation and the touch and all like that. So, a lot of people have to relearn or learn that for the first time, as adults.
Spot on, spot on. I mean, for me, the way I grew up, my father and mother, they worked hard. The food, there was always food in the fridge. The heat was always on. So they made sure, though, that was their way of saying, we love you because we're going to support, make sure you have the necessities for you to then do well. But as you mentioned, it was the other languages were not necessarily there. But as even my mother now, she says I love you way more now than she did when I was young growing up. So I don't know if she learned a bit more even after being maybe Americanized or just realizing like there's more to life after they slowed down and retired than just work. And I try not to fall into some of those same characteristics because my work ethic is ridiculous. I work extremely hard. Some people look at me and like, you're always working.
Yeah.
Always.
Well, I spoke to you the other morning and you said, I've been here since, I think it was 10:30 in the morning. You said you'd been there 3 hours already.
Yes. I was in there early, just trying to get ahead. And, I tell people sometimes it's like when your business is on a kind of a high, it's like in the music industry. I parallel it to it all the time because in the music industry, if a rapper or an R&B singer, whoever is hot, then they dropping another album and another album. They working hard, right? When any of them, 50 Cent, any of those guys, right? When they were hot, put out the albums. And then if you do that, those albums, that success during that time can take you on for the rest of your life. Yeah. So there's a point in me, one of the reasons why I work so hard now is because my business, I'm 23 years in the game, and my business has hit a high point over the last 3 years. And I feel like if this opportunity, I need to take advantage of it and push it as much as I can right now so that it can pay me back down the road. Yeah. I still got to be careful because you could work yourself to the grave.
That's great insight. It's just very real. Like, you don't work, especially when you have a business, you don't work for a paycheck this week. You're working for the longevity so that you can have something in the future and even something to pass on when you are not.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So born and raised in Springfield Gardens, Laurelton.
I say Laurelton more.
Laurelton.
Springfield, my Laurelton friends would look at me right now like, wait a second.
Like, how dare you?
How dare you? How dare you? I'm LA Queens.
Laurelton, absolute. And you, what high school?
Hillcrest High School.
Hillcrest High School, the famous. And then what did you do right after high school?
So right after high school, I started, I went to college and I was working part-time in LIJ. So a couple years there, just, working part-time, enjoying, partying, doing things that college kids do. But I was learning what the hospital system, I was paying attention to what was going on, even though I was young, because I thought that this would help me down the road at some point. So I was working in the clinic, which was interesting enough, right? So I worked in a clinic where the community would come in and, who are on, whether it was Medicaid or whatever, would come in and I would see my own people. And I was a part of making sure, registering them, making sure that they saw the doctors and everything was taken care of. So I did that, and I paid attention to the structure and some of the customer service involved with that. At that age, I was only like 19 years old.
What college were you in?
I went to Long Island University in Brooklyn.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I finished up Old Westbury in Old Westbury.
So what was your takeaway watching the hospital system at that young age?
So takeaway is I always tell people when you're in a job or any position, don't just throw it away like, I don't care about this company and who cares, I'm just here for a paycheck. Because you can learn things that this organization is doing that can help you down the road. Mm-hmm. So my takeaway from it was understanding structure, like hierarchy, processes. So there would be, if someone got in trouble, okay, you get a write up, you have to, the union, all of the processes to make things happen was extremely important. It's things I learned so that when I started my business, I used some of those techniques and processes when I only had one employee, because I knew that if you have to have a framework, and if you build on that framework, then you could build something special.
Right. That's wonderful. I mean, for years, I was a teacher assistant, then a teacher, then a guidance counselor, and I do credit my years in the school system teaching me a lot of the structures that I use in business. And if I didn't have that, I would have really needed someone to bring that to the business. So I absolutely understand. And so how did you start to know, maybe I'm jumping ahead too much, but how did you start to know that you were going to be a business person on your own?
So when I was working in the hospital, I have my business partner, Louis Burke. He worked in medical records. I was working in the clinic, and we would meet in the lobby of the hospital, looking at the cars, going, the doctors pulling up in their cars, right? So those things from those early years of, this doctor has a Jaguar or a Benz or this. So there was a little bit of that inspirational, like, I want that too, right? So that was something that we had in common. But we would throw bus trips. We did a few parties. So we had this whole do an event, make some money off of it. Wow, this was so cool.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the start of me and him working together to create something from small to something that may have some size. So when those events went well, after a time, we took some classes to upgrade in the hospital. And after taking the classes, these billing classes, asked the professor, what's the most we could do with it? And we could go in management. And at that time, we were still young, and management it wasn't cool at that time, right? It was like, and it would have been a tough situation to be managing people, et cetera. So he said, well, you could start your own billing company. I said, now I like that, because I typically like to do the things that not everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
When you go down the route that everyone else is going, first of all, there's just way more competition to do that. Yeah. And to me, that's boring. So when we started talking about having, starting a billing company, I said, okay, let's make a plan to do that. So in order to do that, I started working part-time at a doctor's office. He got a position in the hospital doing billing for a department. So we were starting to learn our craft.
So you left your respective positions that you had,
right,
and started doing something different,
right, in the billing world,
right.
But more part-time to learn before we started our own, because it's very challenging to start a business fresh, and you're brand new in the space, and you're brand new into being a business owner, because there's a lot of different pieces to that.
Yeah.
So that's how we got started. And our first client, my mother gave me the money for the computer. His mother gave us the money for the software. And it started in my house in Lawton, in my old bedroom, where we created a desk, two desks we put in there, and it was me, him, and at the time his girlfriend, and we started the company. And our first client was an acupuncturist, because nobody wanted to do his billing for him. So he said, sure, you guys can do it. And that was like the beginning of the story. And
that's a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, you all are the classic entrepreneur story, where you took a bit of knowledge that you had from the training that you got, the certification that you got.
Certification.
And then intentionally went off and got these jobs that kind of built on your knowledge base, and then took it to your home and set it in motion.
Yeah, started a home-based business, and I was the landlord, I was the cleaning person, I was doing all of the security, everything that's needed. I was able, we were doing it, and it worked for a while. But there's some trickiness with home-based businesses because sometimes it can hold you back because those the expenses are low, everything's lower, and you get sucked into all right, this is under control.
Yeah.
But sometimes when the pressure's on you in different scenarios, it forces you to push back harder, and that push back can allow you to get the business and excel sometimes quicker than if you're in a very comfortable state.
That's so true. I mean, I have my own experience as a person in business, and it's very true. So then you start the business in the home, and then what was that process by which you ended up taking the business out of the home and putting it elsewhere?
What happened was when we had the business in the office, in the house, we realized that we could not bring on the proper employees that would want to work in a house. Like the type of employees we would get would not represent where we needed to go. Our clients, when they wanted to meet us, okay, we'll meet you at Dunkin' Donuts,
Starbucks, yeah.
Starbucks, that whole thing. Oh,
Right.
I need to come to the office. So after a while, and we were in the house for about 8 years. So we did a while in there. And again, that's what leads to the point of why I said sometimes it can suck you into a little bit of complacency. But once I realized that we needed to step up, like this is cool, but if I was working in the hospital now, I'll be making more money. The novelty just went its course, right? The whole I'm my own boss. That was nice in the beginning, but after a while, if you don't have money in your pocket and you have a family or you're married or anything like that, you need to pay bills.
Yeah.
And that's when we realized it's time to step this up, and we need to present ourselves in a better way. And presentation is extremely important in life in general. How you present yourself is how people, if they take you serious or not. So that first impression coming to a house, we needed to move that to a more business type of environment.
Right. That's so first, what's the name of your business?
So it's E Central Medical Management.
Central.
And so there's two, and then there's Onet Systems. So in the last 3 years, started another company that deals with certain types of providers who are not in network, meaning they just don't have a contract with the insurance companies. So they have a whole different way of getting paid. So we started a company that's specifically for that. So it's East Central Medical Management in New Hyde Park and Onet Systems in New Hyde Park and in Merrick.
Excellent. And that process by which you ended up taking it out of the home into your own place, was that first place in New Hyde Park?
Yes, we've been in New Hyde Park for, 12 plus years, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And the quick story on New Hyde Park was we would go to a Dunkin' Donuts across the street from the hospital, and we looked upstairs and we were like, what is this place up here? And it was like, I don't know, what is this place? And we noticed that nobody was there, but it was close to the hospital, and we was looking this time to get a place, but it had no sign on it, so we couldn't figure out who owned the place. So I was like, we need to find out. So I went to the pizzeria guy, and this is how the story went. The pizzeria, I said, do you know about upstairs? He's like, I don't know what to tell you, my friend. So I said, who do you pay your bill to? He said, oh, okay, smarty pants. So he went and got the phone number of who he pays the bill to. We called. The landlord was like, how did you get my number? Mm-hmm. I told him what we did. He said, okay, I'll let you see this place tomorrow. We go in, we see the place, it's beautiful. And the reason why the story made sense, he was like, because you worked so hard to find my number, I'm going to give you this place, because this place was my father's office, and I wasn't really renting it out to anyone. And we've been there ever since.
Wow. I mean, sometimes that's how the stories go.
Sometimes that's how the stories go.
It's like, asking you shall receive.
Yes.
So what are the goals now that you have a steady business and even another business underway? What are the goals that you have for your business or your businesses?
Well, as an entrepreneur, one of the things is you create a business, but there's an end goal to sell the business, right? And in order to sell the business, you have to make sure your business can run without you. So, like I said, I'm working extremely hard, but over the next few years, I'm looking to put more things in place so that I don't have to be day to day with everything. Because the business, if I'm the business is not sellable. If my business partner is in the business is not sellable. So the goal is really to be able to hire people who can run the business, work the business in such a way so that in, a certain amount of years, I could sell it and reap some of the benefits of all the years of hard work. So that's really the goal. And obviously continually gaining clients and gaining business, because it's hard out here for everyone. No matter what. And you could have a big business, little business. You always got to continually make money and make sure the expenses are less, right, to stay afloat.
I mean, when I think about what senior business people say to younger business people, it's one of the things that people say is a truism, that you need to make sure that your business can run, without you, and to make sure that you reproduce you in terms of a manager and have a solid staff so that business can run optimally. And that is great that you are making that happen. And what I'm thinking is that, in another thing that people say is a truism is make sure that you have a business that can sustain itself, like something that someone always needs, right? So think about just in the community, start a laundromat. Everyone always needs to wash their clothes, or, food. Everybody always needs to eat. So you've really started something I believe that everyone needs. It's a smaller community of everyone, but every doctor needs to get paid for their services.
So your point is spot on. It's healthcare a lot of people in healthcare falls in that kind of arena. But what we have to be concerned about, technology, right? Technology, you have to stay on top of that. So because other companies will come out and be like, we'll do it for faster, for cheaper. So that I have to stay on top of technology. But my goal is to be, we're in between you, doc, and the money. So no matter if it's billing, patients, the business of medicine, the finance of medicine, I stay in that world to ultimately be always needed. So, we've definitely found that way. I think now the key is to capitalize on all the years that we've done, because for many years we were, like I said, we were out of the house, and then other years we were just behind the computer. And being a minority business owner, it was also very challenging to get clients for many years. So for us, on our website, we wouldn't even have our faces on the websites for we still don't technically, because we didn't want to be judged by color. We want to be judged by our services. And it, like you said earlier, I think that we're the only one, definitely in Queens or in New York City, the boroughs in Long Island. I haven't seen a company of our size doing medical billing that's a minority-owned business like us. So was challenging in the early years to get clients. We would go to their offices after talking on the phone, and we come to the door. And listen, my name is Bert Lurch, so you don't know who I am, right? Like, who's the Bert Lurch? And my partner is Louis Burke, right? So we come to the door, and they're like, huh? But at that point, all right, let me give these guys a shot, because they already proved it over the phone, et cetera. So those are some of the challenges that we had to deal with.
Right. So you, the person would have had to be practically KKK to say, get away from my door at that point, because you built a rapport with them, presumably.
Yes.
And, so this is good. And, take us inside the world of insurance companies a little bit. Without calling anyone out specifically, what have you observed with insurance companies and paying?
So one of the things I want to put out there is that, you know, people always think medical providers, whether it's doctors down to therapists, anywhere, and what I didn't want to, I didn't mean that as down. I'm just saying the full gamut
The whole gamut.
of healthcare providers. Insurance companies fight to not pay. Medical providers don't get paid as much as people think. You can make a good living, but the insurance companies are always fighting. I have a business to fight on behalf of medical providers to get paid because the insurance companies are also looking at ways to not pay. So, and then they increase the demands and requests from doctors, providers. I need notes, authorizations. So the providers now have to get additional staff to help to be paid. And that goes towards the bottom line.
Absolutely.
So when we got in the game, medical providers, the reimbursement that was being paid was a much higher than it is now. So now it becomes a volume game. And what does that do? Volume
to the service.
Yeah. Volume game in healthcare is a problem because now you're going into your provider's office, and if it's not a time-based thing, specifically how they're getting paid, they're going to try to get you in and out of the door as quick as possible because they need to see 3 more patients to make up the money that they used to make 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. So that's now, and then you start talking about in minority communities, that becomes a bigger issue because now they don't have the opportunity to get comfortable and communicate any issues and concerns they have, and that's what you're seeing. So that's one of the pieces I'm seeing in the healthcare space with the lowering of reimbursement, all of the technicalities to be paid. It's ultimately it's affecting the provider, but it's really affecting the patient. Which is our community, which ultimately ends up being kids, adults, etc., that we are around all the time. So that's people. It plays into the whole cycle of it all.
Yeah, I have always said, being a therapist, I started off, with no ability to have a staff, and I used to always had someone to do my billing, and I realized, and it's almost like a saying that I've said from time to time, you need a full-time pit bull to do your billing because the person has to be knowledgeable and aggressive about getting your money. Because if you sit with patients, especially in something like mental health, where we are famously underpaid. Every clinician that I have has a master's degree and is either doing their 3,000 hours of clinical, learning, or they have a master's degree, 3,000 hours, and a state exam under their belt that, obviously shows that they know this work and that, that you have to pay them, right? You have to pay them a certain amount to be competitive. And if you are being paid, let's say $75 for a session, what can you really pay a therapist? And that question comes up time and again. And so I know that therapists are not the only ones that are suffering.
That healthcare dollar, the medical providers get the smallest piece of the healthcare dollar.
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense. Like this healthcare money to help patients, the people that's directly helping them, get the smallest piece. So what are they doing? So they have to survive. So then you get medical providers that are doing all type of things to try to make up for it. And it's unfortunate. So what you're saying is an issue. And I don't know, the healthcare system in itself it's definitely broken. I see it from both sides because I see some providers doing extremely well because they know how to work the system. And I see others who are really great clinicians and are not able to be reimbursed the way that they should.
Right. Right. And so is that a triangle or a square? Like when you talk about that, the pieces of who's being reimbursed and at what level, I'm imagining you have the clinician, you have the insurance companies, and then
Hospital.
the hospital itself, right?
That's a big piece.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you got, and then there's a whole bunch of companies in between. You got companies like me. I'm getting a piece of the healthcare dollar.
right. The providers help
Yeah,
with reimbursement.
yeah. So when I'm talking about the provider, I'm talking about you directly, but then the people around you.
Right.
So hospitals, to give you an example, to put this in perspective, not exact numbers, but the increase of executive management staff in hospitals over like the last 10 years or 5 years or so increased like 300%. Because this is the game now. The insurance companies make it harder to get paid. So the hospitals or doctor's offices have to hire people that know how to navigate how to be paid. So now this money that's supposed to go to the providers is you're hiring people on both sides to. It's like hiring lawyers. You know, they always talk about lawyers, end up burning all the money. Healthcare has so many of these ancillary people involved, right. Businesses involved, because the money is not. Everybody's trying to grab for the money, and or the insurance companies are trying to hold it. And I don't have the answer for it, but I just know that this is what I see.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've witnessed a lot doing the work that you.
I witnessed a lot. I witnessed really good medical providers go out of business. I witnessed doctors. I know a doctor that we've seen when we, like 15 years ago, committed suicide because he was up on charges for fraud because he was billing out too much on a test in New York State. There's quite a bit of those things that are happening because of one part maybe the temptation to be paid, and the other part of the just the struggle of not being paid.
Right. Yeah. I know someone right now who's a person I believe provides excellent service to the community, who's under investigation for what they have billed, and it's as if the message is that you should stay poor,
right,
while you are providing these services.
So you end up being scared because you don't want to be under investigation, and then you turn around and you bill all the lower levels, and now how do you survive? So now you can't afford the good nurse in your office or the lab tech. So now your service is not there. And now you're working double time because you can't afford an NP. So you're missing out chart notes to see those issues that your patient is having. It's a vicious cycle.
Right. Bert, I appreciate your in-depth knowledge into a field that not many people really understand in depth. And it's, I think it's very important work that you do because when you think about what service is to the community, as you mentioned, the provider is probably the center of that, but those that help good providers stay in business and do what they need to do to feed their families are doing important work. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bert Lurch. Bert, can you give people your social media or whatever handles you'd like if people wanted to reach out?
I thought you were going to say Social Security.
Like, can you give your social
Can you give your social? I said, I didn't sign up for that, my friend. So you can reach me on LinkedIn, just Bert Lurch at LinkedIn. That's where you can connect with me in my business world. And that's probably the best place to find me.
Okay, excellent. Like, share, subscribe. If testimony was a person, presented by Help to Adjust, Inc., peace and love, we will connect.